joining us today for another day of the Fall Summit. Green all over, Marita Esteva with the Path of Ish, your host throughout the week, with another famous, amazing, powerful, strong, dynamic woman today. And we're going to talk about green all over, zero waste in the elemental body. Robin Duryea. I probably said that wrong, but talk about it. She's a proud fourth generation Californian. She is a little bit of yoga and a little bit of rock and roll. So we're going to talk a little bit of that about that. But Robin, you came to yoga at a very young age, at 15 years old. Can you kind of tell us how you got to yoga so young?
When I was young, I was in an accident and part of my body was crushed. And I had both, obviously, a physical reaction to that and as well a spiritual experience. And when I was 15, and I was so young that it was very abstract, I couldn't put words to it, but a memory that's never faded. And when I was 15, I came across a book by Krishnamurti, and I started reading his teachings, and they resonated with what I intrinsically felt already. And I've also kind of paralleled with some of what I experienced in my accident. So I started reading and exploring, and then I found my first asana class when I was 18. And I had arthritis and a lot of surgeries, and the yoga, physical aspects of yoga started to heal my body, as well as the mental and spiritual aspects started to heal my heart.
Now, your bio online reads a little bit talking about how you've always had a connection with spirit in kind of your dream world, but also with your affinity for the planet and the love for it. How, with this accident that you're talking about, you were able to kind of see how your individual body and the sanctity of it was also connected you to the sanctity of the collective earth body. Can you expound on that a little bit?
I felt this distinct difference. And when I say difference, I don't intend to suggest a separation, but between my body being matter, my bones were crushed and experiencing the loss of breath, and the disintegration of my body, and then the healing ability of the body, and how that holds our spirit, and how there's no real division between any of us in this experience. And when we can acknowledge the body as being matter of the earth, we see that relationship as being vital for remembering and experiencing the spiritual aspect of our being, love, I guess I would say. And so when we can observe the earth as being who we are and comprised of love, and all of us the same, then we start to feel more potentially peace internally, and then externally eventually.
Eventually, it takes time, right?
Yeah, and that's where practice comes in.
Practice.
Yeah.
Now, your love of yoga, even though you started at a young age, you say you never thought you would actually teach. So how did that start happening? And why? It says something about how you felt it was a call to action through your Buddhist studies, how yoga is a call to action, to be an actor almost.
Yes. Something that I heard recently, so the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday celebration, he did a world tour, and I went down.
Birthday, Dalai Lama, happy birthday.
Hey. I went down to Orange County. Shout out to the Dalai Lama. I went to Orange County to celebrate. We could go on and on. I went to Orange County to be a part of the acknowledgement and celebration of his life. And one thing that he spoke about was both the power of prayer and meditation, though that's just the beginning. The next step is action and a willingness to act on those prayers and the meditations. And I really appreciated and resonated with that. Yoga really strengthened my body. And as my body got stronger, I was better able to receive my spirit and build resilience around creating action. And whether the action is found simply in dialoguing with your partner in a difficult, intimate conversation, or action is stepping up and creating voice for many people, or action is just simply getting onto your mat and moving every day because it eliminates pain so you can be more present for each other. So action both in what might feel small degrees, but are just as relevant as the more obvious ways in which we respond and can act.
I love what you just said, and yeah, I totally understand it. I'm questioning, how is it that as yogis can we be activists on and off the mat? There was just a huge global summit in San Francisco, and that's why we're doing this, kind of expanding the consciousness of that powerful, impactful week. But other than marching and other than attending things, how is it that we can take the next step as a true activist of love? How can we relate back to the planet and back to this consciousness of love that you talk about?
That's the whole point for me anyway, is to remember. So the mat really is our training ground for being out in the world. So coming onto the mat is just an opportunity to, I feel like I heard a teacher once say that the yoga mat is just a small piece of the sidewalk. And come onto the mat and cultivate tools. So when we go out there into the real world, we can implement those tools. And those tools being physical strength, utilizing the breath to stay calm and clear and articulate, to use the elements, building heat in the body, fire, to expand our threshold for almost discomfort, which comes with action. Space, being in a room of other people, learning to engage without distraction. So it's all coming onto the mat, whether you're in your own home practice or in a group practicing, it's developing skills and really seeing the practice as such. And so when you go out there, you're able to use it in that way. So intention is very important, muy importante.
I love the conversation about attention, because it's kind of taking a step back and then a step forward. You know, we talked about action, not just, like the Dalai Lama said, having prayers, but action, but it's really the intention. So it can be as small as getting on your mat and having that intentionality that connects you to earth, because it can be so overwhelming at times, you know, with water protectors and things happening and fires, and how policies and public policies and the time that it takes to move on. And then the opposite, when you don't think anything's wrong because you're surrounded by water and you don't understand that it is a resource that is needed. So just having that intentionality to connect to the elements inside of you and to Mother Earth, I love that. Now I want to kind of expound a little bit more on intention, because you are a practitioner of mantra, and I want to talk about the intentionality of mantra. How has that changed your life?
Huge. So mantra, ma, mind, tra, instrument, loosely translating. So mantra is really a tool for focusing the mind. So the same way we do the asana, we come into down dog and warrior two, strengthen the body, discipline in the body. Mantra really focuses the mind. And mental health, that phrase is now more common, but it's not common in any way. We just almost have forgotten that aspect is the most important part. Everything in life is how we perceive. our bodies in some sense are sick because our minds are sick. And so mantra really just starts to bring, and that's the deeper aspect. It also centers the mind on joy. It creates a sense of lightness in the mind. Mantra helps create space between thoughts. So when we have overactive imaginations and we start to get a little neurotic, in both the light and dark ways and all of it, mantra really brings focus. For me, at a young age, depression is part of my story, and addiction is part of my story. And chanting continues to be a tool that I turn towards for support always. And so in the calming of the mind, it helps me just reconnect to both the strength and the softness in my being.
Beautiful. I love mantra, even though sometimes I'm singing the wrong song or tune or words, but it is very powerful. You also do a lot of sound healing, so it seems that you're very tied into vibration. So I kind of want to talk about tying into vibration, into the vibration of Mother Earth as well.
From the perspective, or really understanding that all matter first is vibration. You know, it's kind of the jig is up now, you know. It's not really that esoteric. That's just how it is. And we're still somewhat fixated on the form aspect, what we look like, and, you know, the shapes and the sounds that come out. But really, at the root of it, it's just vibration. So when we drop into the subtler aspects of ourselves through mantra, through pranayama, through asana, we start to listen. Well, we cultivate listening so we can really hear and receive the vibration of it, and it being source, and all of us being components of it. It's a little strange maybe, but and so music, you know, yeah. I don't know, like if you're editing or what. I'm just like, but music, it drops us in, you know, it drops us into that place where we really, you know, become one. Like it's not a fairy tale, it's real, you know, or the fairy tale is real. And sound for me just reminds us that it's all the same. We're all the same. Our stories are different, but anybody in the world knows what pain feels like, what love feels like. Everyone knows what it feels like to be hungry, at least for a moment. Everyone knows the spectrum of feeling. And in our culture, it's been somewhat dismissed and devalued, though it's an intelligence that carries a lot of potency for healing. And the earth is the most ornate and beautiful orchestra we could ever, you know, be engaged with. We're a part of it.
So two things come to mind right off the bat. Just the power of music to unite people of all shapes and forms and things like that. I last month went to a Beyonce concert, and there was a gentleman there that I would never thought went to a Beyonce concert, you know, middle-aged kind of, you know, big construction worker. And he was there for Beyonce, loving it, and had this connection because maybe he just like woke up like this, you know. But so the power of music to unite people in these forms and these bodies who we think we are and we're not, I think that's powerful. And then the other thing that comes to mind is the power of vibration and sound, and how they're now revealing studies of how monks built monasteries through use of tonality and sound. And I was just on a class a couple weeks ago where there's a woman who's an international kind of vibration sound healer, and she said that they have to be very, very precise sounds to actually create this movement. But it just blows my mind, you know, how powerful sound can be. And then again, our mind, we get stuck in our mind.
Yeah, the mind is the static. So you on the radio dial, and the mind is all that static. And then when you hit that dial just right, when you attune and align, the music is offered. And then you get to engage in that. And that's the dance. That's the play. And that's the dance that Shiva's engaged in when we're in Nataraj. And the Om, his drum, holding the drum. And I don't know where I've heard this along the way, and I feel it to be the case. Om is the sound of all vibration, and it's the sound of earth. And I've heard that through the tools of modern science, they've detected this sound in space. And so when we chant Om, it starts to cut through the illusion, and it starts to cut through that noise and that distraction. And it brings us to that centered spot where we actually start to unify. And when you resonate in that way in yourself, you start to resonate with others in that way. And nothing and everything else falls away.
Om's in space. I always wanted to be an astronaut, and that's so powerful. And Om is so powerful. I sometimes listen to this 1 hour meditation on Om, and it blows my mind every time because it's so easy for us to be disconnected by language. I don't speak your language. I don't speak your language. I grew up speaking at least 2 languages, 3 and stuff like that. So, but still, I didn't know other people's languages, and we use it as an excuse to not connect. But if we can erase all of that, and instead of saying, oh, you're not saying something that I understand, but saying, oh, you have a sound of creation within you that is the same sound of creation within me that can unite us and connect us not only to each other, but to our own selves and, of course, to Mother Earth, who is the first sound of Om, the creation, that it power coming from that. Another thing that connects us is Ayurvedics. And I'd love for you to expound a little bit. I know you were a practitioner of Ayurvedics. If we could hear kind of your story of how you came to it, how it kind of connected the dots for you. I'd love to hear about that.
It changed my life in the same way that yoga did. And I really speak as a practitioner, and where I've done, did work in India, and I've done workshops over the years. I really, my learnings are through my just practice on my body. So I was a pretty sick kid, even after the accident. I had a few other circumstances that just challenged my body and the ecosystem of my body in ways Western medicine wasn't able to really respond to. And I don't know when, I can't remember when I first started learning about Ayurveda, but it resonated immediately. And so it comprises the body, or it acknowledges the body as being comprised of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And every body is comprised of a very specific combination of all those elements. And so the practice is really, for me, a practice of listening to my own unique makeup. And so through study, you start to learn which elements you have in your body more of. So you create a lifestyle and a diet that help counterbalance your elements. So mine have a lot of fire, a lot of heat. So I can have a lot of passion. I can get angry easily. My skin can rash easily. I'm also on the front lines, good leader. So there, pros and cons to all of it. And so you figure out what you need for yourself to balance that out. And so I started just experimenting in my body, practicing for over 10 years. And it's given me so much health and energy and clarity and vitality, really. And that's meant to be practiced in conjunction with yoga. It's acknowledged as the sister science to yoga. But how you organize your home, the colors, the smells, the lighting, clothing. Do you get cold easily? Do you, overheat? So when you leave your house, you know how to care for yourself. And then also food as well. In our culture, we're just so homogenized that we're losing the individuality, which is where the irony is. Our difference is what makes us similar. And so it's okay to be different. And Ayurveda has just been really empowering for my own health. There's so many ideas of what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And we're very extreme too. Like, Just because you decide to be vegan for 6 months doesn't have to be, you have to be vegan forever if you don't like it, or you could, eat meat for 3 months to get back on track if that's what feels right for you, and then continue on with your vegetarian diet for another 10 years. It's hard because our politics have so much become a part of our diet, understandably. But Ayurveda, the alchemy of the body, and really learning to listen to that and honor it, trust it. I feel it's like for the rebel. Because everybody has an opinion of what you should do, you shouldn't do, and all these umbrellas. And I just, no. So.
About intentionality, we've talked about connectedness, we talked about activism, and we've talked about the ability to unite to Mother Earth and through the elements and the elements in our body. But asking people to go inward and to trust themselves, I think that's really challenging, specifically when it comes to healing, to go in to listen to yourself.
Self-care is a luxury for many people as opposed to a necessity. Yeah.
It is a luxury for many people, and it is. What is it that you can say to those people who are stuck in this idea of suffering is part of my karma? What do you think will get through to them?
Yeah, I love that. I love everything. I really appreciate everything you just said about all of that. And what comes up for me first is seva. And that's the root of yoga and really of any practice, any tradition. And seva, service. And really learning to be of service to each other. That doesn't mean sacrificing ourselves for another. Keeping ourselves healthy and fit so I can be present for you. Keeping myself clear and in love so I can be engaged with you. Staying grounded and open so I can be there for and with you. So service shows up not just in donating money or food, presence, so we can be present for each other. So when we see somebody, I think too, we're really easy to dismiss and negate the little things. We're fighting against culture and we're supersize everything. And so we forget how impactful eye contact can be, a smile can be, letting somebody in the car before you, even though you're late. Like those acts of slowing down and becoming present are just as impactful as making signs, banners, and donating money. And I think we forget that. And service brings us into the present moment, which is being engaged with each other. And we're designed like that. We're designed to need each other. And again, it's not a mystery. That's just how it works. It is designed around love and empathy. That's why the weight of the world is such a weight, because we're empathetic by nature. And so I would say remembering that we keep ourselves healthy so we can continue to love and be there for our family and friends. It's not to take away, it's actually to be there, to be more present. When I love myself from the heart side, not the ego side, but when I love myself from the heart, I can then continue to love you. And it's not easy. That's why discipline and practice are what they are. It's not. That's the other thing. You have to take the idea away that it's easy. Culturally, we're like the 5-minute fix. It's easy. I'll give it to you in this package and you'll be able to do it. It's not. For me, it's hard. It's very hard. And it takes commitment and patience, a willingness to make mistakes. That's just a conversation I don't think we actually always have when we talk about beginning to care for ourselves, the planet, each other. It isn't easy, but that's okay, because anything worth it takes work. And so intention, for me, keeps me grounded while I continue to move through the challenges that always, at least thus far, bring me joy.
And that's a journey, right? The whole idea of taking care of yourself before you have to take care of others. Just, again, I travel a lot, so I've seen that demo all the time about the safety mask. And it's just kind of the back of my head until someone actually brought it up in a teaching as a way to understand that. So yeah, I love that.
On a practical level, start small.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. If you have just never practiced, no discipline, it's just, which I get, start with a minute. At the beginning of my meditation, just when I first started into it, I put 2 minutes on my app. Or on my timer at the time, on my timer, and now they have apps, but 2 minutes, that's a long time. It's a long time when you've never done it. So give yourself permission to start small. Even figure out where you're going to do it. Start there. Start to view your space in a way, maybe I could do it there. Think about it for a week. Start to visualize yourself there. Start to connect with the space. Clean it. Maybe put a picture of a loved one or a candle. See how that feels. Give yourself permission to take your time. And seeking a good teacher is really important, and community. Yeah. So reach out.
Asking for help, and I think that's revolutionary for a lot of people. I know it has been for me at times in my life, and just coming from sometimes a place of having to know everything, or people always asking me things, and I know it happens out there in society that we always feel like we need to know everything, and we should, because we have Google now, right? I know in speaking to Diana, she was, earlier this week, she was talking about how revolutionary and how powerful it can be to ask for help, and asking for help from our community. And we've talked about community today. And I know you have been building a community of kirtan, and I would love for you to kind of tell us about that community that you're building through sound and music.
I have an affinity for music. I love music. It's been a part of my life forever. So a natural draw to the chanting for me, a natural draw to the kirtan. I was noticing some resistance in the yoga community around chanting. It's weird, or I don't know the language, or what am I saying? Some resistance and some hesitancy, and I wanted to start to just dispel that and break that down. Again, we're fighting culture. We're just culturally just like linear and rational and limited in so many ways, and we're so conditioned and really, frankly, I feel manipulated and controlled. And chanting, I just wanted people to create a safe space for people to start to explore this very powerful practice. And again, it doesn't have to be this esoteric, crazy thing. It can be very simple. Thank you. Chanting is just a repetition of sound. Mantra is repetition of sound, and kirtan is the devotional aspect of that. So whether you're just chanting, repeating of sound, or you drop into the more devotional aspect, either way, it's incredibly powerful. So just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It's all shifting the mind. Om, om, om. And kirtan for me I had an experience recently. I did the kirtan training for the week, the kirtan camp with Jayu Tal, and I carry a lot of pain in my body and a lot of just pain in my heart in general, so I practice. And at the end of the week, you ever go under a waterfall, and the weight of the waterfall, just the weight on your shoulders and on your head, is just so cleansing, and it just feels like it takes away everything. It's just so healing. It's a beautiful waterfall. For me, kirtan and chanting does that. It just cleanses my body. There's so much just pain and suffering, and really awakens this sense of peace and joy. And I wanted to create a space for people to have that experience, and a safe space. I'm very informal about it, and I try to create a good balance of tradition. I attempt to continue to study and acknowledge the roots of this practice, but also acknowledging where I'm a California girl circa now. I'm very much influenced by my passion and love for rock and roll and all of that. So the space that I create, there's room for questions and sharing, and I break things down and I talk about the science of it a little bit, the effects on the body and the brain. But really the best teacher comes through experience. And so then we just chant, and it's enlivening, it's activating, it's empowering. I always feel so inspired and clear afterwards. Yeah, and there's nothing that I've experienced, like what makes it special is call and response. You know, when we go to a show, a rock concert or a symphony or wherever, you mostly just sit and watch, and it's somewhat mind-based in a way. You know, maybe you'll dance, you know, but singing and movement is innate to who we are. It's found in every culture and every tradition. And with kirtan, you call and respond. And it's so powerful to be in a room of even just one other person. But when you have 20, 30, 40, 100 people all calling out to the divine together, there's no way you can hate. It's impossible. Yeah, or forget. There's no way. Yeah, hate or forget. You can't forget. It's like, wow, okay, you're my brother and my sister. I was listening to this podcast the other day by Yoga Girl, I think her name is, and she was interviewing Seal, and he was talking about when we allow ourselves to, when we're willing, when we give ourselves permission to come closer together, there's no way you can hate each other. And how he's started to acknowledge everyone in his community as either a brother or a sister. And, you know, think of his role, an entertainer, so he's meeting lawyers and all sorts of people of different roles. And instead of looking at each other as, you're my banker, you're my yoga teacher, you're my tax guy, like, you're my house cleaner, you're my brothers and sisters who make up my team, my community. I thought that, I really liked that. Not just a friend, but a brother and a sister.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, with kirtan, you can't pretend.
That's amazing. I've never been to one of your kirtans, but to be in a space that can be created where you cannot deny the unity of community, that you are my brother and you are my sister, and the reason is because we are one, you know, again, through through the universal it. That sounds very powerful. I have taken some of your yoga classes that do include some mantra, which I sometimes sing incorrectly. Again, we talked about that earlier, but what I've always appreciated is the space that you allow for people to experiment, to play, and to fail. And, you know, we talked earlier about intention, and we talked earlier about how people sometimes might mistake intention with having to know it all, and how it's difficult to ask for help. So how is it that you are able to maintain and hold this space of love where people can learn to play, to fail, because I know I've fallen on my face a few times attempting a few things. So yeah, I would love to see where you get that love from.
That's a good question. Through my practice, there is no such thing as failure. That's a myth. It's not real. And so it doesn't happen. The Bhagavad Gita teaches, on the path to self-realization, there are no mistakes and there are no failures. Even the smallest effort towards self-realization is enough to free one from the greatest fear. There are no mistakes and there are no failures on the path towards self-realization. We're gonna fall. It's just part of it. I remember when I was young, my dad put me on skis right away, and he would force me to fall. I was just go straight down the mountain. I wasn't afraid of anything. I just went straight down the mountain. But to teach me the skill of skiing, he would force me to fall. And he would say, you won't learn if you don't fall. And that memory always, I guess, kind of sticks with me a little bit. You have to. And anyone successful in anything will tell you they failed a million times before they had any success. It's just, there is no failure. And we aren't. That's not us. It's all a practice. And so failure is a lie told by the ego. But if you're connecting to your heart and your spirit, then there is no failure. So you just have to trust that and fall. The human self falls, yes, and the spiritual self always gets back up. And so this practice, we're reminded, well, we're put into the engagement of those aspects, both our human and spiritual self. So the human side falls. Please, will you help me? And the spiritual self says, thank you. Now I can help you.
Encouraging, because we have a tendency of living in this dualistic reality. We can, we can't, with the programs that we have. And sometimes it's hard for us to not even attempt anything because we are afraid of failure, specifically when it comes to environmental issues or even the issues of our body. Here, experiencing this body, this tone, this flesh, in the practice of yoga, being okay with your body and your, if your body doesn't act a certain way, your hips don't go a certain way. Nature itself is not, quote unquote, perfect. If everything all else fails, you just sing, right?
One distinction, that I would make on that from the yogic perspective is I am not my body. These aren't my hips. Who's my? That's the ego. It's a hip. But if I'm identifying from spirit, from heart, that's why I imagine why many teachers say bring the leg up.
I like that. Yeah.
Right leg in the air, not your right leg. Just thinking about how semantics and language shapes our perception, to bring it back to chanting and the mind, how we perceive. And if we're identifying with the body, then we've already fallen into forgetting. I'm not my body. My body is my vehicle for me, capital M, for my highest self. So learning to see beyond the body and acknowledge, I am not my body, I'm not my body, I'm not my body. I think I had a teacher who would say often, my gracefully aging body, because it's gonna change and but that's not who we are.
Correct.
So this misidentification to the body is, I think, a source for a lot of suffering, because we're fighting what we can't control.
Yes.
But I'm not my body, this just what's gonna happen. So if I connect to what's housing my body, then it doesn't matter how many times I fall, because I'll just get back up. And if I need to rest, I rest.
If everything all else fails, you just sing, right?
And in the end, you just sing. That's right. Hallelujah. And then that's how you just get up and dance. Yeah. And that's like for, just for the sake of just like dialogue and banter, that's where paradox comes in. And one aspect of yoga is what seems opposing, the sun and the moon. That's the irony. They're not. You need the opposing forces to create balance. You need movement. You need imbalance for balance. So we have this idea that it's opposing, male, female, left, right, good, bad, right, wrong. But they're not actually, they're needed to work together in order to get past it, to see beyond it. So rather than seeing it at odds, how do our differences make us the same?
And one of the things that does unite us all are the elements in our bodies and of our bodies, and the ones that we share, of course, with Mother Earth. So I know we've all been waiting for some tips and tricks of Ayurveda.
I got both tips and tricks.
I said at the beginning a little bit of yoga and rock and roll. So yes, definitely tips and tricks. But I would love to talk about how, with this change of season, as we're welcoming fall in, as the elements are changing around us and in our body, what are the ways that we can see it, the expectations we should have, practices that we can have, yogic and Ayurvedic as well, to welcome these changes of fall.
I was actually just noticing that in my own body today. I can feel in the air a slight shift. My feet I've been wearing flip-flops, for the past few months, and I can start to feel my feet be a little more cold and tender, my hands. Instead of a tank top, I've started to shift my wardrobe. I've pulled out my gloves and my scarf. I'm also SF based, but start thinking about how you can shift your wardrobe to help keep you in balance. Again, if you start to get more cold, thinking about your food. During the winter, I will always carry hot tea with me when I'm driving to wherever I am. The warm tea grounds me, and I drive a lot, so I'm in movement and in my classes. And so even just holding of the mug as I'm going from point A to point B helps keep me grounded. So having warmth. Start thinking about giving yourself permission to enjoy the season. Use the darker days to rest. It's okay. Think about your diet, having warm foods, which all comes back to listening to your body and not judging it. We judge constantly our needs. We dismiss what we need. And again, we're fighting culture. And we have to stop doing that. Just little things, just little things. If you want to take a nap, take a nap. You don't have to justify yourself to anybody. It's really learning to start to build some confidence, I guess, too. Now I'm going off on a tangent, but little things. Start thinking about your wardrobe, start thinking about your food, give yourself permission to rest. Warm baths.
Season is changing. What are some of the things that we can expect and maybe start eating as fall comes in? Not everyone, of course, has gardens, so they're not as aware of seasonal changes, when to plant things, when to harvest them. We're just used to being able to go into a supermarket and buying anything that we want, even though it's out of season. So what can we expect as the season changes with foods and ways to eat them?
Think about the obvious of how to create balance. So we're going into a season of cold, so you want foods that are warm. So instead of, if you have a tendency for ice water, let's say, from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's my understanding that ice isn't good for the body. But if that's something that's part of your habit and routine, try not having ice, room temperature water, no cold cereals in the morning, nothing cold. You want nourishing, warm, some warm oatmeal or your tea or warm coffee or chai or a warm porridge. As far as vegetables, I hesitate to say anything about that because it's too specific to the individual. I would say if you really want to start to deepen your practice around vitality and energy and health, to go to an Ayurvedic website or get a book and do your test. It's very easy and it's fascinating. It asks you to think about your body very specifically, the shape of your nails, the color of your eyes, your dreams.
As I understand, it also goes into more of your constitution, like if you have a tendency to be drier or oilier skin, if you're cool or hotter. We talked about how you run hot, but also your teeth shape, as well as some other specifics.
So many specifics. And so I would encourage people to be curious and find a resource, which is easy nowadays. Take this quiz and start to study the elements in your body, and then just do a little bit of research. Think empowering. For me, yoga and Ayurveda is very empowering. Instead of it being a chore or having to learn something, be curious, be excited about taking control of your own life and not being dependent on medications or a system that really doesn't have much concern for health. So I see it all as a source of being empowered. And so be excited by that, as opposed to overwhelmed. And with Ayurveda, in my experience, the smallest things can make the biggest difference. And I love that. And again, it goes against culture. We have to make these huge shifts in our life that are going to disrupt our communities, our families and friends, and how we go out. And it doesn't have to be like that at all, in my experience with Ayurveda. So I would say find resources, figure out what your dosha is, your constitution, the elements in your body. Pick 1 or 2 suggestions that feel manageable and observe for 3 months. For the first year I did it, I cut out onions and garlic for a year. I started there. That was the first thing I ever did. And I made a huge difference for me. And 10 years later, I eat onions and garlic, but it's, finding for you a system that works, and nothing's forever. So yeah, pick 1 or 2 things, do it for a few months and observe.
Observing. Taking that time, not making huge leaps and bounds. And again, a call to action of trusting yourself, the empowerment of your intuition. So revolutionary in a time when we're trying to do everything, know everything, go as fast as we can. So kind of taking that step back and reminding ourselves that in the end we are love. And if we can love, that's what is powerful. And that's where we're not carrying waste, in our mind, in our bodies, in our elements and things like that. So we are kind of reaching the end to the hour, my friends. So if there's anything else you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it.
I love what you're doing. And remembering that we are the earth. And so to observe everything we're being given as that, a gift, so we can give ourselves permission to receive it, so then we can continue to give. And this relationship between receiving and giving really is, for me, at the root of the practice.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you, Robin, for taking some time out of your day to share your practices and your history, where you come from, how you have discovered the revolutionary act of being and staying and learning and combining the elements inside of us and Mother Earth and everything like that. So there will be links, of course, to your Instagram and your website so people can follow you on and off the mat. Everything that you're doing with Kirtan, your yoga retreats, retox, detox, rock and roll and yoga. So I totally, I'm going to say it totally, advise you to keep up with Robin. She is dynamic and visionary and compassionate human being who holds amazing space. And for those who've never tried out mantra or who do love mantra, there is a way that you can download some of Robin's mantra and our upgrade, as well as you're going to be able to download and keep this video and interview as well as all the other ones during this week. So again, my friend, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. Om Shanti.